So we have the spoilers for chapter 22 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, and Yuji just destroyed Mahito inside his domain expansion. And we also have some hints towards a possible Modulo sequel or a Jujutsu Kaisen Part 3 based on some events that took place in this chapter. So there's a lot to discuss, but of course, let's start from the top. So the chapter opens with Mahito, Yuji, and MARU having a conversation. Yuji says, I kind of understand what you want to do and how you plan to do it. Are you going to arrange the shapes of Japanese people's souls so cursed spirits won't be born? A cursed technique that interferes with one's soul and strengthens it with the cursed energy of the spaceship and Okkotsu senpai. Can that really be done? MARU then says, if you allow it. This one isn't just the type to obediently do as told. Naturally, he'll have to be subdued. And of course, he's referring to Mahito. And this part is really funny because MARU then says, subjugation, right? Should I do it? And Yuji then replied saying, nah, I'll handle this myself. And he then bends down to Mahito and looks him in the face and says, my only concern is accidentally killing him. If he then disappears, we won't be able to use him, right? MARU then says, this is the passage of souls. No one here has a physical body except us. Death can't happen here. Only defeat and subjugation. Yuji then looks at Mahito and says, he said we could tear this place apart if we wanted. So, you win? Mahito then gets angry and jumps back and says, don't you dare look down on me. And it does seem as if the spirits inside this world has the ability to shape the environment to what they want it to be. So the place then shifts to Shibuya. Mahito then says to Yuji, if you still have a body, you'll die if you're killed. Only we, which I assume is referring to spirits, can fight without holding back. He then does this massive idol transfiguration. And there's an explanation for this because it does seem a bit weird, but he goes on to explain that this entire place is a space formed from a composition almost indistinguishable from a soul. Everything that exists here is a target of my cursed technique. And he goes on to then say that he'll ruin Yuji's act of being young or whatever. And then he does a domain expansion. And this part is so funny because the next panel shows all his fingers and his hands just fall into the ground, and it seems like Yuji used his shrine to dice him up. We then get these 2 full pages of his entire domain pretty much being dismantled, right? And his entire body being cut up into very small pieces. Yuji then walks up and says, hey, were you always that weak? And MARU then grabs what's remaining of his head. There's this like tiny portion that has his eyes and says, sorry, but I'll have to use it. The following panel then shows Yuji standing there looking a bit worried, and MARU says, what's wrong? Yuji then says, I was just wondering if that guy might be messing with our comrades who died. MARU then tells him that there's no need to worry. Normally souls can't interfere with each other to that extent. Yuji then says, isn't that exactly why we needed him in the first place? Isn't that what his technique does? And MARU then tells him that he doesn't have much cursed energy left, and then said that Mahito pretty much had his strength because of his cursed technique. Yuji then says, you really do understand everything, don't you? And MARU then says, I only know because we're here. He then continues on page 13, saying, you've given me everything I need from here on. There's just one last thing I need to confirm about Earth's Kallians and the cursed spirits. And it does seem as if MARU asked him how spirits are created, but that isn't placed here for some reason. But yeah, Yuji then goes on to say cursed spirits are formed when cursed energy that leaks from humans accumulates like sediment and takes shape. And this phenomenon observed almost takes place only in Japan. So in order to create a world where cursed spirits are no longer born, there are only 2 options. Eliminate cursed energy from Japanese people or turn Japanese people into sorcerers. MARU then says, as for option 2, the logic is that a sorcerer's cursed energy circulates properly within their own body, and because it is actively expended through the use of, techniques and jujutsu, the amount that leaks out is drastically reduced, correct? And Yuji then says, yeah. And this part is a bit confusing because I assume this is Yuji saying, does that include the contents of Yuki-san's notebook? And then it also appears that MARU says, that is convenient. It is a bit confusing, but also keep in mind that there's also a text on the page that is blanked out for some reason. The leaker doesn't want us to know for some reason, so I guess we'll see when the chapter comes out. But yeah, MARU then says, I don't think option 2 is what we need. The damage or harm caused by cursed spirits would simply be replaced by harm caused by cursed users. And wouldn't that also result in more people like Zenin Toji being born physically heavily restricted types? We should proceed with option 1, removing curse energy from both Japanese and Sumerian people. That is correct, right? Cursed spirits aren't born from the Sumerian people anyway. If we were to take curse energy from just the people of Earth, it would just create friction again later. Yuji then says, well, that's true. He then begins to sit down and says, it feels a bit strange to ask, but... MARU then says, my apologies, I am MARU. Yuji then says, MARU, what do you think about what we're about to do? MARU then says, it's atonement. We've caused trouble for Earth. At the very least, I want everyone to feel that the world is better because they met us. Yuji then says, sorry. I won't deny that way of thinking. In part, it is correct. But what we're about to do, it is a big sin. In exchange for safety, we'll be stripping the future of every possible potential. For example, now that aliens have arrived, research into curse energy, which had long been stagnating as a potential new energy source, should have rapidly advanced. It is possible that hundreds of years from now, resources will be exhausted, and the cursed energy will be the only thing left to rely on. That kind of possibility will be erased. Above all, we'd be meddling with other people's body without their consent. That is nothing to be praised. MARU then says, then what should I do? Yuji then replied saying, but still, I'll do it. MARU then says, is that really okay? Yuji then says, no it's not. Even so, I'm going to do it. MARU then asked him, why? He then says, because I believe it's what should be done. More than anything, it does seem like I'm going to live for another 300 years or so. So I can see through what needs to be done. And if it comes to that, I can also bear the punishment for it. Yuji then says, even if curse energy disappears, I wonder if I still won't age. MARU then says, I'm not going to interfere with the souls of the current sorcerers or the Simurian people. I intend to limit it to non-sorcerers and to humans who will be born from now on. Otherwise, there would be people whose lives would completely change from this point onward. Yuji then says, well then, next up are cursed spirits. Even if we remove the curse energy from Japanese people, cursed spirits will probably still be born. MARU then says, huh? And that is where the chapter ends. So there's a lot to cover here because there's a lot happening in this chapter. And I do feel like the plans are a bit short-sighted because I don't know if they remember that there are the other groups of Simurians, the Deskunte tribe, I think that's what they're called, that still exist on their planet, and some Kalians might still be on that planet. And as I pointed out in my tweet on, well, Twitter or X, whatever you guys want to call it, maybe there could be a part 3 to JJK where the rest of the Simurians invade the planet looking for Dabura because he wasn't permitted to leave. And you know, people are saying, well, Dabura is so overpowered, whatever. But maybe they harvest the power of the Kalians, the remaining Kalians. They're literally gods on their planet. So just imagine if those guys were to invade the planet for Dabura years later after the current sorcerers have died out or become very old and fragile, and they aren't able to defend the planet from them. And because no humans are being born again with the ability to use curse energy, then the planet is pretty much defenseless. And even if it's not that tribe, maybe it's some other alien beings from some other planet. The existence of the Sumerians should give them pause on what they should do about their power source that allows them to defend themselves. They have no idea what other planets of aliens are planning to accomplish. So I think the existence, the very existence of aliens in this universe should give them pause of stripping themselves of the power to defend themselves from invasion. But yeah, I guess we'll see. There's also the editor's note that says, is harmony in the world impossible? Then we have the announcement, due to the overwhelming popularity starting the next issue, we'll apparently be getting 3 consecutive color pages. And it also says part 1 begins, presented with a color center spread. I have no idea what that means. People are saying that it's a hint towards something after Modulo. I guess we'll see. But yeah, that is it for the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. And also guys, consider becoming a member or just subscribing to show your support. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.